Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Syncing with ServiceNow. I've got a good topic for you guys today and got some new people. Moen Khan has joined us. Moen is the CTO at XenTegra, and Moen is responsible for, well, all things CTO, and to be frank, a lot of CIO. So you get to do both external customer facing and internal IT with a specific focus on technologies that we think a lot about and that are going to drive our business and our customers' businesses forward. And man, that's where ServiceNow fits in. Moen, how's it going?
Good. And thanks, Andy, for the warm welcome. And really excited to wear both hats, CIO and CTO. And I'm excited to see how we can, what XenTegra is known for making difference, to see how I can contribute to making difference.
Yeah. So it's probably 3 hats, right? It's CIO, CTO, and podcaster.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and podcaster. Moen, before we go into the actual blog, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on that one, but with you to see, what is it about ServiceNow that excites you, the company itself, and what they're doing?
So ServiceNow has always been very close to my heart, especially because of the transformation that they have been doing to business. A lot of time, I come from back in old days where people leaving job and we have IT team running behind them, collecting their laptop, their access card, their keyboard, mouse, all those things. It used to be a painful process until ServiceNow came into picture, making everything so transformational where you are not running behind, putting a role behind things, but you have a process and digital transformation behind everything. So it's a click of button when a person resigns or when a person comes on board, how HR and IT and business, all these 3 things collaborate. That used to be always, if you look at Andy 20 years ago, how things were a nightmare, trying to have HR talk to business or business talk to IT. There was a huge gap. And this is where ServiceNow comes in, filling those gaps on making these 3 or 4 different organizations talk to each other.
Yeah, I love what you said there. And I love how it's going to tie into what we're going to talk about here in a second. And that is, every company is in some form of digital transformation. They're either transforming from pen and paper to digital, or they're transforming from version 1 of their digital transformation to version 2, which hopefully means more SaaS and more cloud and more things that they're not responsible for maintaining every day. But every company's in some form of digital transformation. What I love, I think you said, about ServiceNow is they are part of that digital transformation, but most importantly, they are the user integration, user interface, user experience of digital transformation. And if a company's lucky, and I'll use the word lucky there, they are moving from whatever their legacy was to a world of SaaS-based digital transformation that, and I could be very wrong here, but in the at least the short to midterm, maybe long term, that's it. I mean, at that point, digital transformation is going to be what ServiceNow or their chosen strategic products do, and they're along for the ride. And that heavy lifting of transforming digitally for the customer and the user interface to that just became somebody else's problem. And you, Mr. Customer, just go forward choosing the best products to use, and DevOps and iterative development and those things become somebody else's problem.
Yeah, and if you just put Al behind all these things, think about where this can go.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to our blog, really. And we are in the category at ServiceNow, if you go to their blog site, of IT management. What I love about this topic of IT management is IT management, because of platforms as a service like ServiceNow, is turning into really business management, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, if you know that term. What's good for IT is likely good for the business. And to be frank, IT is probably too large of a part, but a large part of business these days. So if you're getting better at how you manage and implement that, you're probably getting better at how you run your business.
I agree. And a lot of time, Andy, if you, again, if you rewind a few years back, IT was always considered as a cost, and business was always considered someone who is bringing money. And that's one place where it was always a big struggle to make these two talk. And that's the thing with digital transformation has been changing. Now, IT is not looked upon as a cost, but it is looked upon more on driver to business.
Yeah. So Moen, let me say it like this. Exactly what you just said, kind of, or what you said, let me just paraphrase or change out the way you said it. When things are good, businesses should be looking to IT and technology, not IT, well, technology, information technology, right? So that's what we are to the business. They should be looking to us to continue to drive forward and get competitive advantages. What's even hotter about this, sexier about this, the reality of this is when things get bad, when there's a pandemic, when there's a downturn in the economies, that's IT's also the place the business looks to get better. It's a win-win.
100%.
All right, so let's jump into the blog here. I'll hit a couple things. Paragraph 2. Well, so let me tell you what the blog is. Technology excellence, the key to business transformation by David Flesch from February 14th, 2022. This is available on the ServiceNow blog site. I'm in the introductory section here, and I want to use numbers. It says, in fact, 68% of these CEOs, not CIOs, CEOs plan to make big time technology investments through 2022. In particular, the study of uncovering that increasing the use of artificial intelligence was one of the top 3 priorities of C-levels, and artificial intelligence enabled by technology. CEOs get it these days. They're not our enemy anymore. They are our biggest champions. It used to be that they saw us, as you said, a call center. Now they see us as what's going to make their business better.
Right.
And next paragraph, this says, no coincidence that this is happening, because it's just the way of the world. It's the way of our future workers. It's the way of competitive advantage. Digital transformation, evolution, which should never stop, is how we get better as a business. So next section of this says transformation requires excellence, and it's got a couple of bullets here. First bullet is automating and optimizing service operations. How do you see that as a way to help the business transform with excellence?
So, Andy, so this is one thing that, like I mentioned earlier, this was one place where there was too much of human interaction that was involved. And every time when there is a human interaction, it comes with some level of error. You call it, it's just the nature of a person, that when a person is dealing with these things, and I will give you an example of one of our healthcare customers. So when they have doctors or interns, when they complete their graduation, there was a huge process, and this was 4-month-long process of going and interviewing and finding handpicking. Every hospital will go to these medical colleges and go and handpick candidates they felt were good. Now they will bring on board. These interns had a lengthy onboarding cycle, which was always a frustrating part for both from the business side and also for the candidate itself. These young doctors who are coming out of academics and getting into a world where they have to wait for a month to get their access, to get enabled into the mode of going and serving patients. So that was a difficult task, which automating and optimizing your service operations, like it says, ServiceNow came in and they changed the way these things were done, especially when we talk about onboarding process. So this became, which was a month-long process, that became so seamless that it can be done in 2 days or 3 days, to bring an intern and enable them to go and do the work that they were not able to do earlier for about 30, 35 days, waiting for getting access and other stuff.
So Moen, you're saying two things: getting the human being out of the way, so that they're not the bottleneck and slowing things down, and you're also probably saying that the human being probably has other stuff they should be doing instead of these tasks.
That's correct.
Yeah. I'm going to make a statement to you. I'm a big fan of the statement. Automating efficient processes is awesome and should be done. Automating inefficient processes, in other words, broken processes, that's something that I'm not a huge fan of. Let's get the process, defined nice and well, and then let's automate the heck out of it.
Totally agree, and especially if it is rinse and repeat. So anything rinse and repeat where you are doing things over and over, to the point of removing human, because it brings that factor of if I'm doing this thing over and over again, chances are that I will do mistakes. So if I can remove that component and those things that has been that needs to be repeated over and over again, that can be automated to provide this service excellence that we are talking about in the world of digital transformation.
So the next one here we hit on briefly earlier, and that's the moving to platform as a service, moving to SaaS as a service, moving to IaaS as a service. I'll throw desktop in a service. We do a ton of that. Accelerating innovation, software innovation. How do you see that being part of the excellence requirement here, discussion?
As we know, Andy, this SaaS has transformed the way we see the whole innovation part. At one point, if you take the days when we both coming from infrastructure background, we know Windows 10, Windows 7, when they came out, how long it takes for an organization to implement or upgrade those operating system from Windows 10, Windows 7 to Windows 10, or when Microsoft releasing Windows 10 every 6 months. Taking that time to go and upgrade those things was a tedious task. Now with the SaaS, and especially if we talk about ServiceNow, the way they release their product, be it Paris release, Quebec, or the new release that is going to be out in a few days here, San Diego release, all those things is now the task of a service provider, where you go and upgrade those product, and then you sit and business don't have to worry about pausing everything and relying on IT to upgrade everything. They can just IT can focus on doing things that they do best, on being proactive and doing more effective tasks than going and doing these upgrades that technology providers are doing. And that's what these SaaS-based companies have done on bringing the software innovation to the update of products and whatnot.
Yep. I'll give you an example. My first real IT job, I was on a support desk for a while, but my first job where I was in charge of some servers and infrastructure and stuff. Company had a headquarters. The headquarters was 4 stories tall. The basement was the entire IT. So easily 1/4 of the employees at HQ were in IT, and probably 1/3 of those were responsible for building and maintaining systems. You move to platform as a service and other things as a service, all of a sudden 1/3 of that goes away, or better yet, that 1/3 can go do things like leverage the technology to help business initiatives, not just be the custodian of those solutions.
I totally agree.
I love that word. I actually used it with somebody yesterday. My former Unix administrator, really mentor of mine, he that's how he introduced himself. He's the custodian. And what he meant was he's the custodian of the systems. And it's not all that different than being the custodians of the building or whatever. It's a very similar thing. And, if you can make that somebody else's responsibility, I bet there's operational efficiencies and cost savings. Number 3 in here is transforming security operations. What is this talking about as far as ServiceNow and IT management improvements?
So it talks about responding effectively to mitigate ever-changing security risk. And this is a no-brainer, especially with increasing attack that is surfacing on a daily basis. Think about the time that organization has to spend on securing and putting a firewall around the solution that they're providing, continuously trying to defend and protect themselves. That's the part that has transformed now by trying to avoid all the avoiding all the attack and then the skill shortage that is there to defend these things. So leaving these transformation security operations into a provider who can better do the job on defending and securing their infrastructure, and again leaving businesses to run business.
I love what you just said there too. I was on the stage in front of about 5,000 people one time, and I said to them, you need to get out of the IT business. You need to get into the running your business. And I must have saw 4,850 people nodding their head when I said that. That's the key, right? Get people running their business and not doing these things, including watching the back door and, guarding against risk. And by the way, there's, security things here that you, Mr. Company, will never see that ServiceNow, Mr. Platform as a Service, is seeing from multiple angles. They got your back and you didn't even know you were in trouble.
100%.
All right, the last one, and probably the most important one. Let me tell this story real quick, and I don't think I've ever told it for this audience before, but there was the 90s when IT was run by IT guys like you and I, and we spent a lot of money. Somewhere along the way, CEOs realized they had to put CFOs in charge of IT, because if they didn't, we were going to spend every dollar the company made on cool IT stuff. In that cost center model, when it was looked at as a cost center. Here it's talking about reducing cost and risk, and help us understand how ServiceNow is helping to solve that challenge for IT and business management.
So on the same note, Sandy, I come from my first job with Citigroup, where when I started to ask question on what do you use for operations, and what do you do to manage your infrastructure? They said, oh, we have few options, but we have no tools. I'm like, what do you mean you have no tools? We have no tools, and then they clarified this to be, we have no tools into production that we are using. Every person comes in, they come up with their own software that they feel they are comfortable with. They buy those software, to your point of CFO managing it. The IT owners go and they buy software like for system, they are buying a monitoring tool, they are buying operations tools, all those things. And then that tools never gets deployed, because by the time the lengthy operational cycle where you go and buy the product, purchase, it goes to procurement, it comes in. By the time this product is ready to be rolled out, either the person has left or he has lost interest, and that product is acquired but is never been deployed. And that's where I feel that ServiceNow is changing those things, where you can go and buy those software. Definitely, now you don't have to wait for a third party to come and implement those software for you. ServiceNow is implementing those. It is a SaaS-based product, so you can quickly go and roll those products into your production from 0 to 30 days. Now, instead of waiting for a number of months trying to implement those things, now you have access to complete portfolio, and it's just the licensing key that is turning on and off. And now this has, from the cost saving perspective, it has brought a lot of cost saving. On top of that, it has given you flexibility to turn on and off things as you need.
Sorry, Mo, and I'm on mute. I'm in a hotel lobby, so I'm trying not to be disruptive in terms of the background noise. That's a win-win, right? All of a sudden, IT and the business gets what they need, and the bean counters, the guys watching us, all of a sudden they've got a great way to operationally create a financial model that makes sense, that if we get X, we know we're paying Y, and they're able to help hold us accountable for producing based on what we're spending.
Yeah, and on the same note, Andy, at one point, when people are coming in or leaving, IT used to be the custodian of watching out for those assets. The devices, anyone who starts, they get keyboard, monitor, docking station, laptop. There are X number of asset that the employee gets when they start. Now, when they leave, when they are coming in, there are many things throughout the life of this employee. They are ordering, be it a software asset, be it a hardware asset. All those things are being watched by IT, but think about organization with 80,000 users. How do you manage those things? And that's where I feel that ServiceNow, ITOM, or your ITAM, your asset management, all those things come into play, where you have a technology watching out for those things and not a human who is sitting there and watching if all those assets, be it software, be it hardware, all those things has been returned to the pool or not. So this is the automation and transformation that we are talking about, not having human watch out for those things, but having a tool or a product or a system that has transformed the whole operations for asset management. And think about the cost saving that is bringing in, where you are not losing all those assets. And especially in today's world, when we are talking about living in a pandemic world where people are working from everywhere, now you are shipping out those devices to different places. How do you keep track of all those assets that is there, leaving your four walls, now going and staying in other people's home? How do you keep track of all these assets that is floating around at people's home while they are working, and when they leave, how do we keep track of all those things? And that's where ITAM or ITOM for ServiceNow brings their transformation.
So Moen, it's always good to call out in these, especially when the blogs do it. They a quote, nearly 2/3 of CEOs believe technology and digital transformation will have the greatest impact on the future success of their enterprises. Kind of says it all, right? The CEOs now see IT and digital transformation as the way to get to where they want to go, and be prepared for what happens next, right? They don't even know where they want to go, but they know if they're digitally transformed and transforming, that whatever the next thing is, acquiring new banks, acquiring new hospitals, opening new college campuses, that all can be done, enabled by having the right digital transformation, and in our world, digital workspace, ready to go along with that. The next section of the article, 3 objectives that inspire excellence. The first one is build a modern, connected foundation and reinvest in it. I think that goes right along the line with digital transformation and digital workspace.
That is right, and it hits the nail in the head by just using these 3 words of having this excellence into place, where you are cost saving, security, and flexibility. So these 3 things are key in today's world. And when we talk about 3 objectives, building a modern connected foundation and reinvest, put people first by creating the best experience, and that's the most important pillar in running a business, and then driving innovation through better technology. So these 3 are key to the success for any organization or any business.
So I'm going to call some out here. The example given here is Accenture, and there's 624,000 employees. I remember back when Accenture just started, and the guys that got behind all that and funded it and made it happen, big players like Microsoft was highly involved. They needed a good partner, so they created their own. 600,000 employees. Well, XenTegra, much less than 600,000 employees, but we're actually implementing ServiceNow too for all the same reasons. I get frustrated as I'm talking to people when they tell me that ServiceNow is only for the biggest of the big. If you work with the right partners, it doesn't have to be just for big companies.
I totally agree. And transformation starts from, it does not have to be certain size. It can be a 5 people company, and you can still transform, and you can still run a state of art innovation. And same thing can then be replicated back to the other businesses once you understand how these things they fit into a grand schema.
So Mo, and the next thing is put people first. I know that sounds like that's a trivial and something that should be obvious, but historically it's not, right? IT, I've had multiple assessments where I go into the team I'm working with and I ask them what their users think about the solution, and they give me the answer. And then I say, well, okay, show me where you went and talked to them about it and documented what they said. And you did, discovery workshops on this. And truth is they hadn't, it was just them saying what they think the user thinks. I'm going to go ask them. So what's ServiceNow doing to make sure the users' perspective is front and center?
To the same example, I'll give you my experience, Andy, when back in my consulting days, when I would go and talk to customers on Citrix and other technology that they are using. Most of my assessment was around it would always start with, hey, our users have bad experience. What can we do to fix it? This is the top question that would come from in my 13 years of consulting experience. This was one question that comes every time from the top managers. Hey, my users have bad experience. What can we do to fix it? And the standard answer that I would get every time when we talk to IT is, these users are used to creating problem. They would just call out things. There is no problem from our side. And to your point, this question was always asked that, did you talk to your end customer and understand what is the problem? Like, why do I need to talk to them? They are used to calling every day and complaining. And it was always the first thing, that you need to go and talk to your customer and understand what their experience is, without just assuming that this user is used to calling things. And it is never a thing when an end user understands how their experience was yesterday versus today. If there is a lack, if there is a performance that is not as per what this person is used to, that's when it gets raised. And tying it back to ServiceNow, this is where ServiceNow has added innovation on changing this experience, where you are constantly taking feedback from customer. You're constantly monitoring their experience. And this is where I feel that ServiceNow is putting customer, your people first, by taking their experience, be it by doing a survey, be it by changing the way your service does respond to your ticket, be it giving your end user up to date on what are the things that IT is working on. A lot of time there's a communication gap. End user, they call, they don't get response, they don't understand who's working on what. If this thing is being addressed, a simple acknowledgement on from the IT side that they are working on, they are acknowledging, and then giving them constant feedback on how things are done. And now if you take example of every organization, there is a feedback, be it a large organization like Microsoft, Citrix, VMware, Bank of America, or any financial institute. All of them, every time you call them, the first thing that agent does is you will be getting a survey right after this. Please make sure that you respond to this survey. So that is the constant feedback that that ServiceNow is collecting from the customer satisfaction or their experience.
So Moen, if I were to say that in a world of SaaS and subscription, and I'll use Netflix as an example, you don't have a choice. You've got to make sure you're keeping people happy, that they continue to adopt what you're putting out there. Because if you don't, they don't really own anything anymore. They can just leave.
Yeah, correct.
All right, so third and final one here, and really important. We've talked around it a little bit. Drive innovation through better technology. I was on a strategic call this morning with a new customer of ours, what I like to call a partner for life, hopefully. And the conversation was around how to get his people, his developers, to use the virtual desktop in this case of their solution. And I was like, look, there's one option, which is force them to, right? That's the only way they can get to the content they got to get to. But better than that is to provide them a better experience through the technology so that they naturally gravitate towards using the technology. For example, in this case, if you gave them awesome virtual desktops that had the compiler and the check-in, check-out tools built into it, and they weren't trying to check in, check out big code bases over VPNs, they're going to just default to the virtual desktop because it's going to make more sense to them, and they may not even realize what happened to them. Your thoughts on drive innovation through just a better solution?
So one thing that everyone likes, and and this is something that that always comes up, is self-service. You used the example of Netflix earlier. The reason why Netflix is popular today in the world of cable TV, when you were watching things that was being presented to you, now giving you this option of self-service where you can go and pick and choose. And that's one thing on top of many other innovation that we are putting in front of our end customer to make technology better. And that's where I feel that when we enable our business, or when we enable our end customer to have them in control on things that can help them do the job better, that drives innovation, and that drives productivity. And that's where ServiceNow helps by giving them the leading edge technology that gives them their workflow, that gives them that gives them self-service, where many things, instead of they waiting for others to provide, now they are in control, where they can go and do things on demand. And that drives productivity, and that's one of the things that makes a big difference for any business to run.
And Moen, that becomes increasingly important as the youngest workers in the workforce and the next generation. Like my kids are in college now. My daughter sent me a screenshot of the spread, the bell curve, if you will, of her econ test that she took this week, that she did well on, but she showed us where she fit. They're not gonna wait around for the next class for the professor to tell them. They're gonna want to see real time, how'd I do? That's powerful, and that's going to drive people to want to adopt the technology versus being told they have to, which our generation grew up being told you had to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And think about it, Andy. My 10-year-old daughter, she called me the other day saying that I need to build a presentation and I have to present this. And I'm like, I learned a presentation when I started working, and that too after 2 years. And now you're 10-year-old, 5th, 6th grade, and you are working on doing a presentation or building a web page or doing an Excel. And these are the things that I feel this is where innovation comes in, when you are enabling your young generation and giving them this power to learn these foundation, and then come up when they grow up, things will be way different than how things are today. or in our time.
Yeah, my high schooler is already doing podcasts. Like I did my first podcast a year and a half ago. She's already doing them.
And mine is second with you. So
Yeah.
I've never done this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the future of all this, and platforms. I keep saying platform when I talk about ServiceNow. It's what it really is, platform, because it gives you something, and then you, Mr. Customer, or you, Mr. Customer, with help from someone like XenTegra, can extend it to what you need in order to drive the business. And that's this whole blog, right? Talking about how to better enable the business through the technology and modern technology of ServiceNow. Well, Moen, we've done it. We've used the hour. We've hopefully helped people learn more about ServiceNow and IT management and business enablement. Before we let you go, anything else you would want to add to this?
No, thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me here. And I really appreciate what you are doing for the community. And I feel this is one thing that none of the partners they do. And I talk to customer on daily basis. And customer, this is one of the biggest challenge for them, that no one tells them what to do. And this is where you are bringing, setting up the example and setting up the bar so high that if you talk to a good partner, they should be teaching you, to your analogy that you use all the time, that don't give them fish, teach them how to fish. And these are the things that you're doing is making a huge difference.
Yeah, so I'll take that one and extend it. Don't give them a fish, teach them to fish. And ServiceNow is giving us all the fishing gear, not pole, but gear, because it's a platform that we all need to go fish successfully. Awesome. Well, Moen, I appreciate it, and more to come.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.